Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Digital Fridays. Universal Design for Learning is our fifth webinar in this series that will be running all the way until the end of the summer. My name is Gustavo Jimenez. I'm going to introduce Ali Soken in a bit. We're excited that you're joining us. Also, those who will be watching this webinar at a later date, we'll be posting the recording in a few days, so it'll be accessible on YouTube along the recap. I just want to remind you that you can also type in any kind of questions or comments that you have, and at the end of the presentation, we'll take all of your questions and answers. I'm going to read a brief introduction to Ali Soken. Ali Soken is a soon-to-be ABD Ph.D. student in education, math, science, and learning technologies in the Department of Teacher Education and Curriculum Studies at UMass Amherst. His research interests are media education, teacher education, and computational thinking. So, Ali, thank you and welcome. I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. And everyone can hear me, right? Oh, okay. I need to share my screen first. And yeah, and the title of my webinar is Universal Design for Learning. And I just want to share my outline for today. I will start to talk about the myth of average. I think that's the rationale of the UDL, Universal Design for Learning. Then I will talk about 3 principles of Universal Design for Learning, which are engagement, representation, and action and expression. And I will share some useful tools. I will provide you some resources that you can try to make your practice better. And my presentation is available online. You can whether type the link or you can use your smartphone with the QR code and you can access it. So and I'm so happy to be here to share my understanding of UDL and especially I'm very grateful for the helps of Adeshima and Gustavo to make this webinar possible. So let me start with my short story. You know what they say? For every presentation, you should start with a story. So, and I just picked this story because I think it perfectly illustrates the problem of one size fits all. Sometimes I will use my notes in the computer on my left, and sorry for sometimes I'm just losing my eye contact with you. And there's a very important TED Talks by Harvard education professor Todd Ross, The Myth of Average. He has a book with the same name, and he gives a very illustrative example from Air Force around 50s. And the story is about during the 50s, the Air Force realized they have a problem. They have great pilots, great technologies, but the results they have is not that much good. And they are starting to question, well, what's the problem? They are blaming the pilots, they are blaming the technology, they blame the flight attendants, but they don't think about the design of the cockpit that the pilot is using. And the question is that how do you design one cockpit that can fit the most individuals? To be able to do that, they developed 10 dimensions like height, shoulders, chest, neck, those types of things. And they just calculated the averages of 4,000 pilots. And they just measured every pilot and they create some averages. And one researcher proved that and sorry for that, they think that it's creating an average size for average pilot would work most of the people for everyone, but it's deceptively simple because the one researcher just used those average numbers and compared those numbers with 4,000 pilots, and the result is interesting. The answer is 0. The average cockpit doesn't fit for anyone because there is no such a thing like average pilots. It's the tallest pilot is not the most fat person among the pilots. So they realize that like designing something for the average pilot is designing for nobody. And they decided to do that, like we should bend the average and we should design for the edges, because their pilots have jagged size. And the solution to the problem is like adjustable seats, and we are using in our cars right now. And instead of designing for the average pilot, they're just making adjustable for different people. It's a great example, because I think this is really transferable to our educational context, because in different countries, I can talk about Turkey and I can talk about the US, we generally tend to think about, oh, who will be my average learner? What are the things that I know about them? So we are designing for average learners, but it means nothing, because there is no such a kind of thing like average learner. One student is like good at science doesn't mean that he or she has a like good reading skills that can understand all the things you are talking in the classroom. So instead of designing and thinking about the average learner, so UDL, and then I will just share it quickly, and suggest us to think about the edges, like low achievers, high achievers, and having a flexible design in curriculum that can address diverse needs of different students. Universal design for learning, actually universal design comes from the discipline of architecture. It's about designing the buildings to make it accessible for different person with different needs, like for example, physical disabilities. And how can we make our buildings more accessible to everyone? Universal design for learning, it's a kind of same approach in the learning context. How can we make our teaching accessible for everyone? Then in that context, while we think about the Air Force example, UDL is a framework to improve and optimize teaching and learning for all students, all people. It's a set of principles for curriculum development that give all individuals equal opportunities to learn. As I just said at the beginning, UDL is an alternative to one-size-fits-all approach. So let's see these guidelines. Actually, we are talking about 3 guidelines, like engagement, representation, action, and expression. Engagement is the why of learning, why we are learning, why we are meaning making around some certain things and topics. What of learning is about representation. How can we represent the data, the information that makes sense to students? And how of learning, it's a kind of how can we let kids to show their understanding, their comprehension about the topics we are covering. And I want to start with the why of learning, the engagement. Engagement is one of the fancy words that education community is generally using. And they are always saying that you should make sure that your students are engaged in your classroom. But how? How can we do it? So why this is important? So under this engagement, why of learning principle, we have 3 subcategories. They are interest, effort and persistence, and self-regulation. Both of them are really important. And UDL suggests us, the educators, the researchers, like you should provide options. You should provide multiple ways that you should provide different ways of engagement that students can access the content you are teaching. And regulating interest is all about like giving some autonomy to your students and giving them a choice over the things that you are doing. It's about increasing the relevance, value, and authenticity, and just try to minimize the destructive elements or the threats that students feel about the classroom. So, and we are talking about the first principle of UDL, the engagement way of learning. And as educators, we should provide options for recruiting interest, sustaining effort and persistence, and self-regulation. I was talking about recruiting interest. So it's all about like learning works best when it's like when the learners take the ownership of the process. So in order to be able to do it, so we should know the personal interest, background knowledge of our students. What are the things that they are interested in that we can use that as a bridge to find commonalities between what they already know and what they will learn. So, and making it authentic is really important, because when students think it's something valuable, they will put effort on it. Then we can jump to the next one, effort and persistence. So learning sometimes is painful, and it requires like sustaining effort, and even in like elementary school or even in grad school. So you always, to make sure that your learners are constantly putting effort to learn something, and instead of just giving up and leave the learning environment. And I really like the idea of self-regulation, because when you learn, what's the best way that you learn something, and you can have you can be an autonomous learner because you are learning how to learn, and you are self-regulating your own learning process. And to be able to do that, we can, let me see my notes here. And you can encourage your students to observe their own learning processes, that we will come to that point at the end. And they can become more cognizant about what they are struggling with, what are the things that they are doing great. And you will probably heard like people saying, I'm a visual learner, because they have some experiences that show they did great when they draw some diagrams, when they saw a video. But some learners are audiovisual, like prefer audio information, that they can so good at listening. We have some kinesthetic learners that they want to move in when they are learning. So we should let them know what is the best way, what's the best method to learn something. I have some resources for each subcategory, like recreating interest. So there are some online platforms that you can use in your classes that your students can see different subject areas, different disciplines, and based on their personal interest, they can pick some interesting information that would increase their engagement. For example, online museum tours could be a way. I didn't see the Louvre Museum yet, but their website is great, that you can visit it online and you can see so many amazing art over there, and you can learn more about that. And people generally use videos in their classroom. So many teachers are using them. But when you customize those videos, like instead of just watching the videos, you can ask some question and make it interactive. TED-Ed is a very good website that you can add different types of questions, and it could be an open-ended question or multiple choice question, but it keeps your learners active because they are actively listening the video and they're interacting with the content instead of just listening or watching the video for fun. You can add questions to make it more interactive. To be able to sustaining effort and persistence, I would suggest your rubric maker. Rubrics are really useful, like setting the criteria for the learners, and they will be clear about how you will assess their understanding. So there are really useful examples over there in the website, Rubric Maker, and you can just create a rubric and you can share that with your students at the beginning of the course or semester or academic year, and they will know what's coming, and they will know what are the elements that you will be looking for in your actual task. Then they can see how their work will be graded, and it will also help them to put efforts constantly. And this is also actually will help them self-regulate themselves. In the self-regulation category, I want to underline the reflection and goal settings. And in higher ed, in grad school, I have so many professors that they ask us to set some goals at the beginning of the semester to help us to set our own goals and use the semester for that purposes. If I know there are some limitations in the formal schooling system, but if you have a chance to give your students to have a chance to set a goal, their own goal, it would increase their motivation and interest. And at the same time, it's always good to ask them, reflect, how is it going? I mean, it's not a good idea to put the goals at the beginning and don't ask anything throughout the semester or the course. And at the end, most of the students will have nothing. But if you have constant reflections from students, bi-weekly or monthly or every week, you can ask them to write some journals about their own experience, and you can see their progress, and it will help them to reflect their understanding and effort. The second principle is what of learning. It's about representation. It's another fancy word, like providing multiple representations to make your teaching practice better. So this guidelines tells us that like you should provide multiple ways for perception, language, mathematical expression, and symbols, and comprehension. Let's see. Actually, let me explain a little more. Perception is about like how can we, I mean, multimedia learning theory is one of the famous theory in the educational technology world. Instead of just putting the text, you have to support it with different types of media, like putting a text and putting a picture, but they have to be connected with each other somehow. This will help your learners to understand it clearly. So it's all about perception. When we come to the language part, we are living in a world that we can't talk about one single literacy. We are talking about multi-literacies. Kids have diverse backgrounds. They speak different language at home, and they talk different language at house and in school. And if we only focus on one type of language, it will not work. We have to make sure that our teaching, our practice is inclusive enough that students with different languages and different cultures will be okay in our classroom. In addition to language piece, and we are talking about the symbols, terminologies, because each discipline has their own terms, and we have to make sure that those terms are meaningful for students. If you're in a math class, so you have to make sure that kids are understanding what triangle is, what the angle is, those types of things. You have to make sure about that. And comprehension it's all about, like, it's similar to engagement. Comprehension is like, educational community has so many debates about the definition of learning, teaching, education. But one thing they have in common, like prior knowledge matters. So we have to make sure that we know what is the prior knowledge of our students. So we have to make sure that we try to connect their background knowledge with the things that we are teaching them. Comprehension is important here. So I have some specific examples from this guideline, like perception. If you're presenting something, just to make sure that it's readable, you are using a like white background and you're using the colors effectively. I hope my representation is clear and readable, by the way. And if you are showing a YouTube video, just try to make sure that it's opening the closed captioning feature, because English is not my native language. And when it's something new to me, if I'm not so familiar with the discipline, I generally click closed captioning feature on YouTube or somewhere else if they provide it, to be able to understand every words, because we are better at reading than listening. So closed captioning feature could increase the accessibility of the videos you are using in your classroom. Don't assume that your students no matter what grade level is, will understand everything you are talking to them. So sign language, text-to-speech tools, these are like more like students with disabilities, some special needs. Those are the things that you have to think about while you are designing something. When we focus on language, expressions, and symbols, creating some list of terms, the glossary, would be helpful for students at the beginning of the semester, and encourage them to build their own vocabulary. Like, instead of giving a definition to them, just encourage them to develop their own definition and try to collect them in a document or in somewhere that they can go back and see anytime. In some well-designed websites, you can see that for the new terms that you are reading, they put a link that you can collect the link and go back and learn more about the concept or the term. It increases accessibility. There are some wordles that I will just show you an example to, like, you can use that as a textual analysis. If you have a long text and want to see what is the patterns that exist in the data, you can use different websites that I will show you right now, and to see the general sense of the text. If your students has struggling with reading, and you can use that resources to let them, like, give them a chance to understand the texts better. You can use Google Earth to explore. I mean, kids can understand that, the visual things easily, or there are some 3D geometry and math websites that you can use it. For the comprehension, let me see to move this part. Yeah, there are some tools that help them to practice more. For example, you did a science class and just find a simulation website that they can go and check their understanding and explore more. Because some students will quickly understand what you are talking, while others are still struggling there to understand the basics. Don't limit the students who are doing well, and just provide them some further opportunities to grow and expand their knowledge more. These are some websites that you can use it. Visual Words is, well, like, you can explore it, but Word It Out is the website that I was referring. You can copy and paste the text, a whole bunch of like reading, and put them there, and to see the commonalities. The common words or phrases will become bigger. Math Open Reference is a great website that shows why some basic mathematical rules and formulas are coming. Students can easily and play around. It's a very, like, dynamic, interactive website. If you are teaching math, you can use that one. I just used one of the website I just shared with you, like, and I just copied and pasted the current US president's inaugural speech, and that's the result. And without reading all the text, you can clearly see what are the things he focused and underlined. The American, again, all people, country, you can see the words who are, like, used very often, and you can clearly see some words are not that much often. You can change the frequency and see what are the patterns in the text for your students to understand the text, long text, better. Okay, the third guideline is how of learning, action and expression. So this principle suggests us you should provide options for physical action, expression and communication, and executive functions. What do I mean by those? Physical actions, let's say, it's actually hard to describe it here because I'm still learning that part too. But there are some tools that eye tracking tools to understand what part of the screen or the website is, like, getting more attention. Or like virtual keyboards. Some students have some problems about typing, but when you provide virtual keyboard option, it can increase the accessibility. And expression and communication, actually, that's my favorite, because it's all about assessment in terms of assessment perspective. And you can give students multiple opportunities to represent, to express their understanding. They can create animations, they can draw some um, graphs, they can draw some like pictures, they can create a small game by using tools like Scratch. So they can create their own book or e-portfolio, or they can do their own audio journal instead of writing a paper. So this will reduce the stress of students, because culturally or like traditionally, we generally use like written papers as a way to understand students' understanding. But not all the students are great writers. I'm struggling with writing. I express myself better when I speak, or when I present something, or when I draw the connections between concepts. So instead of just limiting your students to show their understanding in a certain way, try to provide some opportunities for them. It will not only help them to express their understanding, it will also give them a choice, and they feel much better instead of just strictly asking them like, you have to write 15 pages something, or you have to enter an exam, just answer the question. So if the setting is flexible enough that you can use different ways, you should definitely implement those strategies. So for executive function, it's really similar. I will show you a mind map in the next slides. You can ask them to show their understanding by drawing something, drawing the connections between concepts that you just covered. So they can create graphs, charts, anything. And these are some tools that you can use and you can explore. Gluckster is a cool website that kids or any learners can create like posters by including multimedia elements to tell a story or to do something to express their understanding. So this is my like roughly like mind map of what UDL is. After covering a concept, you can ask your students, or you can encourage your students to put things together in a visual way to see the problems in their understanding. For example, if you see they are connected to concepts which are not directly connected to each other, you can realize that the student has a problem to understand the things you are telling them. Or if you realize something interesting, that one student draw a picture like this, or about the topics you covered, you can share that with your classroom to show them this is another way of interpreting something. So when you don't limit them only like showing their understanding in a written way, that would help other learners like me to show their understanding clearly and easily. And that will reduce their stress, and your teaching will be more inclusive. I put some resources because like webinars like those people are expecting like seeing some resources that are useful, and I just put some accessibility tools here. Some of them are just extension of Google, but some of them are separate websites that like increase the accessibility of your materials. And to specifically for those 3 guidelines, for engagement, I talk about TED. You can customize videos, and you can create codes. You can use QR code generator. And Nearpod is also like customized lessons. And the good sides of those websites, you can create your own stuff, but you can explore existing samples, because there are amazing educators all around the world. And without seeing those websites, you're just missing what exists out there. You are not alone the problem you are having right now. So, and those websites, the community building websites, are really useful for educators like us to learn from perfect educators that are around the world who had the same problem but solved somehow. So you can check those resources. Representations like Book Creator and Lucid Press. For action and expression, I like storytelling too. Adobe Spark is a good tool to let students tell their stories. There are different types of storytelling tools too. The idea is like having them giving them some interesting, a different way to show their understanding. And we have a podcast creating tool too right there. So if it was a like interactive workshop, if we were sitting in a room, I would ask you to have like 10 or 15 minutes to think about your own discipline and think about the subject and grade level and focus on the representation, action and expression and engagement. And I would ask you to provide some strategies to address those principles. How can you make your teaching better based on those principles? I would like to do that, but you can do it. You can have this activity on your own. You can think that as a homework, and you can address all the guidelines, all the principles, and you can try something. So you can start slowly. You can just try one thing, take a risk, and see the results. You don't need to change all of your practice. Just try something new and see how it works. And I like academic Twitter a lot. If you share your experiences, it could be positive or negative, whatever. Just share your experience with UDL and UDL chat. If you are using Twitter, you will see that so many people are sharing their experiences, their classroom practices, or new tools with these hashtags. You can do it too. Okay. As we talk about the Air Force example and the formal schooling example, one size fits all, it's a wrong and outdated approach. We are living in a world where we are talking about multiple truths, multiple identities, multiple literacies. As a teacher, we can expect that we will have an average learner. No, that's not true. We should forget about the average learner. We should focus on the learners from both ends, like low achievers, high achievers, and someone in the middle. It doesn't matter. If you have a flexible, accessible teaching practice, your class or your course or your presentation will make sense for students with different prior knowledge, background, identity. UDL is all about increasing accessibility of curriculum. It's all about design. How can you make your design more inclusive, more better? I think it was one or two webinar earlier. I just watched the webinar on YouTube. If you didn't watch it yet, you should definitely watch it. Like Making Meaning with Digital Tools, Practical and Inclusive Strategies, the webinar by Rachel Willis and Julius Orgway. I learned a lot from them. So some tools that they just shared was so meaningful, and I'm exploring them right now. You can share this webinar with others. The point is that just expand your professional learning network. Just somehow contact with them. It doesn't have to be on social media. Social media is one way to do it. You can do it in your own school, university, or wherever you are teaching, or you can use social media, different tools. I'm using Twitter for that purpose. And you can learn amazing things and resources from others. When you expand your professional learning network, you will learn from others and people learn from you. That's the secret of learning. And these are the links that I just used, and they are free. You should definitely check the udlcenter.org and the CAST's website about. They have extensive reports about why and how they did come up with those guidelines. There's a research behind that for each principle, and they have resources. They have so many resources that I can't share it with you right now. There are visuals, there are like websites that you can use, and they have some videos that you can definitely go and check it. And I'm really grateful to talk about UDL because it's really meaningful to me. I hope it makes sense to you too. Let me come back to the first page that you can see the link to the presentation. Yeah, you can either type the link like tinyurl.com #UDL, you can type that link, or you can use this QR code to be able to see the PowerPoint that I presented right with you. So this will be available online. You can go and see, explore the tools. And I like to hear from you. You have my email address in the presentation. I would be happy to see your stories, or if you have any questions after this webinar, please don't hesitate to ask. And thank you so much for listening to me. And I would like to hear from you if you have any questions or comments. And if you want to give an example which is directly related with UDL, although you're not naming it that way. So I would like to hear from you. Okay. Gustavo, can you hear me?
Yes, again.
Okay. Yeah, I think we are all done. I mean,
Okay.
I would like to ask if you have any question or comment, I would like to hear it. So that's my presentation. It's available online. Let me show it again. It's right here. Okay. Present. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ali. It was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much for the technical help and like introducing me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. This webinar will be remember, it's been recorded, so we'll post it as long as with event recap by Ali.
Yep.
So we'll be posting all this shortly, and I'll make sure to edit the presentation so we can access the first slides. Okay, Ali?
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Have a great weekend, all of you.
And great summer.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.